Welcome to Movie Recap, a channel dedicated to those addicted to movies. Our focus is to showcase the best recap of your favorite flick. Sit back, grab your popcorn and get ready to be amazed by Henry's crime. Henry, a toll collector in Buffalo, finds himself in a boring job with more traffic than his road. He spends time with his wife Debbie and their marriage seems okay. One day, his friends, including Eddie, ask him to play in a softball game. They need to stop at the Buffalo Savings Bank first, but only Henry stays in the van. The other three men rob the bank, but Henry is caught and sent to prison. Henry's cellmate, Max, is a lifer who enjoys prison and doesn't want to leave. Henry discovers a tunnel between the bank and the Orpheum Theater, used for a speakeasy during Prohibition. He decides to rob the bank anyway, and meets Julie, an actress known for lottery commercials. They become friends and Henry joins a Chekhov play as a cover. Spoilers ahead. Henry is seated at his duty post at a toll booth for the night shift at the beginning of the film. When dawn arrives, he departs and makes his way home, where his wife Debbie greets him with breakfast right away, appearing to have been waiting for him. Debbie tries to persuade Henry that she wants a child while they catch up on how they're both doing while he's eating. Before he can respond, there's a pounding on the door. When Henry answers, he sees his friend Eddie and another man, Joe, who appears to be quite ill and is throwing up. Eddie invites them in, and while they're in the bathroom, Debbie, a nurse, assists Joe so she can take a look at him. Eddie begs Henry to accompany him to a baseball game in the meanwhile, as his team is now short-handed due to Joe's illness, which keeps him from participating. Henry is hesitant to accept at first. Then, Eddie, Henry, and the two men in the back of Eddie's automobile get into the car and proceed to the game. Eddie is grateful that Henry agreed to drive, even though Henry promises him it won't be an issue and appears to be quite at ease doing so. Eddie soon informs Henry that they are almost at the stadium and that they must stop so that he and the other guys can withdraw cash from the ATM for beer. After telling Henry to keep the car running, they don masks, grab their weapons, and head into a bank. Henry is blind to this. Soon after, the security alarm at the bank goes off, forcing Eddie and the other guys to flee via another path upon spotting a police officer in front of the building. Not long after, despite Henry's ignorance of the crime, the police officer approaches him in the car and observes that he is wearing the same jersey as the robbers. Henry is then arrested. During his interrogation, Henry remains silent to the detectives and afterwards receives a 3-year prison sentence. Henry is shortly moved to a prison and assigned a cell with a man named Max as his cellmate. After a brief moment of catching up, Henry informs Max that he is about to be charged with a crime he did not commit. Max claims he was given a life sentence. Later that day, Max gives Henry a speech at lunch on how everyone who is incarcerated had a dream and got there because they didn't realize their potential. Max is surprised when Henry tells him that he didn't have a dream in response to him asking if he has one. Debbie visits Henry 6 months after he was imprisoned. Following an extremely awkward reunion, Debbie confesses her love for someone else to Henry. Remarkably, Henry appears content as he expresses his all right with it and his desire for her happiness alone. A few months later, Max is listening to Henry and a few other prisoners while he cracks jokes about his most recent attempt to scare off the parole board in order to stay behind bars. After that, Henry discusses his upcoming board review in a month and promises to work hard to be released. One of the other prisoners responds that everyone knows he didn't commit the crime for which he was imprisoned. Max claims he agrees with Hector, another prisoner, when he suggests that since he's already there, he might as well have done the crime. Soon later, Henry's parole review is approved, and the day before he leaves, he advises Max to make an effort to get out as well. Max claims he doesn't miss anything outside of prison and is doing well. Henry heads to the bank where he was caught after leaving Joe and Debbie's house, and while he's not looking, he gets hit by a car, and the driver, Julie, comes out to yell at him and inquire if he's okay. Soon after, a police officer arrives to assist. It turns out that this officer is the same one that detained him and that officer also happens to know Henry. After that, Henry is brought to a nearby cafe, where the police leave him. Julie then departs after Henry assures her that he is okay. Henry's attention is abruptly drawn to an old newspaper on the wall, the headline of which reports about a bank heist attempt via an underground tunnel. Additionally, he notices that the hole appears to lead from the bank into the theater across the street. The next day, he goes to prison to see Max, saying he already had a dream and it was to rob the bank he was wrongly accused of robbing, and he wanted help from Max since his parole hearing was close and he could get out soon. Max likes the idea but is not too excited about the plan to leave prison, so he doesn't give Henry the answer he expected. After he leaves from there, Henry goes over to the theater next to the bank and sees Julie rehearsing for a play on stage. The director doesn't seem impressed at one point, and Julie says she wants to leave to get coffee. She's shocked to see Henry as she's heading out, and he follows her to the cafe. He compliments her performance there, and she gets to know him and expresses gratitude that he didn't sue her. Max quickly reaches his parole review date, completes everything Henry asks of him, and is set free. Max sounds a little gloomy at the thought of passing through a tunnel that might not even exist when Henry arrives to pick him up and the two of them head over to the cafe. He suggests that they rob the bank the old-fashioned way, by breaking in with guns, but Henry says he doesn't want anyone to get hurt, therefore he's not interested in that. Max requests to visit the bank inside since he still doesn't seem to be pleased with Henry's proposal. Thanks to his charming demeanor, Max is able to obtain information from the customer representative regarding the location and age of the bank's vault. Then, as Henry tries to show Max where he believes the tunnel is, Julie appears irritated as they make their way to the theater. She is taken aback to see Henry again, and soon after, she meets Max, who fabricates a story about having formerly performed at the theater. Max asks Julie if they can check out the theater, and she grants them access. Max keeps lying within, even inventing the titles of the concerts he did, and Julie becomes quite wary of him. Shortly afterward, a man approaches Julie to provide some information about the concert. Max takes advantage of this to request a tour of the venue, to which the man consents. When Julie and Henry finally get together, Julie remarks that Max appears to be Henry's father, but Henry responds that Max is just a friend. In another scene, Max and his tour guide explore the theater together. Through more devious means, he persuades the man to inform him about the tunnel and its connection to the bank as well as a secret room. To Max's joy, the man then leads him to the location of the tunnels, acting as though he's remembering the good old days. Max keeps hitting the wall to make sure that anything is behind it, even though the tour guide doesn't seem to suspect anything. Just as Henry is informing Julie that he has just returned from jail, Max and the tour leader return to greet them after the tour is over. Henry is shocked and Max announces that he would be returning the next day to begin volunteering at the theater. Julie accepts Henry's invitation to go on a date as they are about to leave. Max tells Henry about their plans to change the dirt in the tunnel as Henry gets ready for his date a time later after returning home. Henry has to head out shortly to the restaurant where he and Julie were enjoying their date. She apologizes for being late and talks about wanting to leave a better legacy. She even mentioned that she was considering going to Hollywood after she finishes her meal. Following their date, they visit a waterfall, where Henry at last confides in Julie about what landed him in jail. Perhaps more intriguingly, he also informs her that he intends to rob the bank in person. Though Julie isn't quite convinced by him, she finds him entertaining. But after getting ice cream, they go to Julie's flat, where Henry gets to read a passage from one of her scripts in order to win her approval. They go out after that. The following day, as they arrive back to Henry's flat, Max tells about his plan to move the dirt in the tunnel to the roof as soon as he hears the door. He is taken aback to see Julie enter the living room, but Henry informs him that she is aware of the strategy beforehand. When they are alone, Max becomes enraged because he doesn't understand why Henry told her and demands to meet Henry in private. However, Henry tells Max it was alright and with great composure. After that, they head over for breakfast, where Max discusses going to jail for being a con artist. When Henry finishes reading the passage from Julie's script, she refers to him as a natural, in addition to being shocked that he already knows it. Max tells Henry he's bored and feels worthless when they might already be digging the dirt inside the tunnel as she leaves and asks Julie to give him a lift to the theater. After Henry reminds him to keep in mind main car, Max gets an idea to offer to be a part of Julie's show, which would give him access to the dressing room with the hidden tunnel. Unexpectedly, the actor who had been cast for the part Max desired for Henry steps down. Max takes this as an opportunity to ask Julie to assist in getting Henry in front of the director because she has already stated that he is a natural. Though she is taken aback by his suggestion, she ultimately assists Henry in landing the part, which allows Henry and Max to begin tearing down the tunnel's wall. Henry contacts Joe, whose Ponzi-like business has collapsed, once they realize they need more help since the dirt in the tunnel is too much. Joining the team makes Joe happy. They begin work the following day, and Henry and Julie eventually get together. When she realizes he's not really interested in robbing the bank to get money, he nods in agreement, explaining that all he wanted to do was change up his routine. After digging one night, the police officer who had arrested Henry stops them. He informs the three men that he wants to accompany them and that he is aware of their plans. The officer responds that he's retiring and wants to go out on a high note, particularly because the bank was unable to assist him when his wife was dying, which makes Max wonder why he's suddenly interested. He promises to be there, man on the inside, and gives them the precise moment when they can anticipate receiving a sizable sum of money from the bank. Many years later, Max and Henry are at home when they hear Joe and Eddie knocking on the door. Joe appears to be hurt. Eddie claims Joe told him everything and talks about wanting to join their bank heist crew. Max is so enraged that he almost strikes Eddie, but Henry intervenes. When Max and Henry get at the theater the following day, they discover that the opening night of the performance is quickly approaching. When Henry realizes this, he is startled and declares that he no longer feels certain about robbing the bank, even if he didn't want to leave Julie. Max, nevertheless, persuades him to reconsider. That day, as they were excavating, Max had to remind Henry that he had left prison for Henry, and now he needed to loot the bank on his behalf. Henry stops as well. Max brings up the cop's retirement scheme as well. Later on that day, Henry tells Julie that he will be departing after opening night's bank robbery. Julie tells Henry how she truly feels, feeling deceived. She sobs as well and tells him to go. Finally, the day of the performance arrives, and the cash gets to the bank just as the policeman had predicted. Henry acts before returning to assist Max, Eddie, Joe, and Henry as they start to work. With Henry still performing, they are eventually able to easily retrieve all of the money. Eddie unexpectedly pulls out a gun and starts shooting at them. Max tries to fight Eddie over it, and at that moment Henry enters the room to observe what is going on. Henry is wounded in the leg by a bullet that Max manages to obtain from Eddie before he does. Right around that moment, Henry finds out that it's his turn to take the stage, even if Max manages to knock Eddie unconscious. Even though he's not sure what to do with his leg, he makes it onto the stage and performs his part adequately. Eddie is eventually restrained and then locked back within the tunnel, leaving Henry, Joe, and Max free to reach the automobile and drive away. Henry urges Joe to stop the car as they're leaving, and although he's hesitant at first, Joe eventually obliges. Then Henry exits and informs Max that he must depart in order to return to Julie. Though upset, Max tells Henry that they would see each other again later and wishes him well. Max and Joe depart at that point, and Henry enters the stage again to rejoin the performance. He begins telling Julie right away that he came back for her and that although it's not in the program, he wants them to go to Moscow together. As he keeps telling Julie that he loves her and wants to be with her, Julie is forced to improvise and try to get Henry off stage, but he refuses to comply. The crowd is still engaged and doesn't appear to be affected by the new material. In fact, one person even calls for Julie to accept, presumably since the presentation has come to a satisfactory conclusion. Julie is asked to say yes by the director, who also requests that the lights be turned down. But all she does is glance at Henry to indicate her response, and that's how it ends. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of Henry's Crime. Please leave a comment below of what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, lights, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.